Welcome to Beyond Your Job, the podcast where we talk about work, life, balance, and everything in between. I'm your host, Iris Clapper, a former attorney and writer with a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology. I'm also a certified professional coach and consultant. So while that's a mouthful, the takeaway is that I'm fascinated by the psychology of work and its impact on how we live. This podcast was born from something I kept seeing in my clients, in my friends, and definitely in myself. You can be thriving in your career, but if you're burning out, it doesn't just stay at work. It permeates home life, marriage, relationships, and of course your emotional and physical well-being. During each episode, I sit down with professionals from diverse industries to gain insight, inspiration, and a few laughs while having honest, thoughtful conversations where everything is fair game as long as they're up for it. So today's episode is going to be psychologically loaded with one of my favorite topics. We spend most of our waking hours at work, and inevitably it spills into our personal lives, into our relationships, our marriage, our friendships, into everything. I find that we also sometimes define ourselves by our job. I've noticed that so often we meet someone and we say, "How are you?" And we're standing around at a cocktail party and then we say, "What do you do?" As if that defines us completely. So I'm hoping that our guest today can help us dig in to how all of that plays out and how we can make it a little bit better. I'm thrilled that with me today is Dr. Allison Bashe. She's a licensed psychologist and the regional clinical director for New Directions Mental Health. She's passionate about the relationship between our mental health and physical health. She is a first-generation college student who obtained her bachelor's degree at the University of Pennsylvania, majoring in English and psychology. She earned her PhD in clinical psychology from Stony Brook University in 2000. Dr. Bashe is a Pittsburgh native who returned to this area in early 2011 after spending 12 years in Colorado. She enjoys adventures that involve traveling, new foods, music of any genre, novels, fine arts, and movies, especially when they're combined with the company of good friends and family. Welcome, Allison. I am thrilled to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Iris. I'm thrilled to be here and talk with you about all things job and beyond the job.
All things job and beyond the job. So digging right in, why is our job completely tied in with our identity? Why, and should it be?
So I was thinking about that when you said that earlier. I think that for a lot of people who are working persons and balance that with a life outside of work, which is everyone that has a job, yes. Right? I think it obviously is part of your identity. I personally think it's important, though, to be aware and remind ourselves that it is not all of our identity for lots of reasons, right? Maybe because that job might not be there next week for some reason. Either because you choose it or someone else chooses it or some other thing, life throws your way. So I think it's important to remember that we all have lots of identities and figure out for yourself what are your most important ones and put effort into those identities in, whatever they might be. I was thinking about this when you said something about being at a party and asking what you do. And I immediately had a thought about that. So I wanted to get back to that, which is that I feel like even though it's a natural question to ask, and it does give you some platform from which to have a conversation from, I think that also it's kind of a boring question. It's like the question that people ask. And I've been trying and not always succeeding, trying though to think of different ways to approach connecting with somebody. And I've come up with some questions, like sometimes they feel a little kooky saying them, but like asking a question like, what are you passionate about lately? Or what do you care about lately? Rather than sort of that kind of standard question, what do you do? Or what have you been doing lately? Because we are so much more than what we do. We are human beings. This is not my phrase, but right, human beings, not human doings. And I think that that's important for us to remember and connect with, identities beyond our job.
I also love that you say lately, because what I'm passionate about today is not what I was passionate about 30 years ago, sometimes 5 minutes ago. So that's okay because we are human beings and we are constantly growing. So, have you had an opportunity to test that out where you say to someone, "Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Allison Bashe. What are you passionate about lately?" And it sounds
Yes.
spooky, but that's so much more interesting than what do you do?
Yes, in fact, I was a little afraid that the first time I tried that out, they were going to call me on it and say, that's a weird question or that's kind of cuckoo. And I've tried it a couple times. And one time they just started talking about what they were passionate about. They didn't comment on the question or that it was different. And the other person that I've tried it out on lately actually like reflected on the question first, like, oh, I like that question. That's what they said. I like that question.
Yes.
They were like, I need to think about that for a second, but they liked it. So it kind of got me over my fear. Like, am I doing something that's so far off, like the social, I don't know, what's allowed in social occasions? Like, are we supposed to stick with the script kind of thing? Or am I allowed to go off script and do something, maybe a little different? And I felt like it was well received. So that was good.
I wonder if there's also expectations, familial expectations or societal constructs that lead us to answer that question a certain way. This is not me picking on my mother because she did this with lots of pride, but way back when, if I was at a cocktail party with her at an event, if she introduced me and I said, I'm a mom and I have two kids and I love to read, she would have immediately said, and she's a lawyer. Did I mention she's a lawyer? And I get that because there's historical constructs, familial constructs, what we thought was a source of pride. It's not a criticism, but it's just something so common, I think, that we see. It's as if we have to justify ourselves by some external definition of what we do with most of the hours in our day. And I'd love to be able to just get away from that. And if somebody asked me what I'm passionate about right now, because of course that's what I was thinking about as soon as you said that, I think that I would say the psychology of work. It's really everything that's behind everything that we do all day. And of course, work-life balance. But if I said that out loud in front of someone who knows me well, they would scream, liar, from the other end of the room because I'm working on that. I'm working on that, I promise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think a couple thoughts I have as you were talking. One, I think what I'm passionate about, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, is just connections, connecting with people. It certainly is reflected in the career I've chosen as a psychologist and in the work that I do as a administrative support to the clinics that I serve and in my personal life as well, just connecting with people. I think it's very important. I mentioned this to you the other day when we were talking about something, and I was talking about identities too, and I want to get back to that. I took a class or something on intersectionality, and one of the opening questions were, what are your identities? And I found myself as we each did our intro, just coming up with more and more identities that I had never thought about before. Like when you really start thinking about it, and I encourage people listening to think about what are your identities, what are some of the things that resonate, with you as how you identify inside of work, outside of work, inside your relationships, just in different settings. And I think the way that you would answer that question, and I'm thinking back to your mom saying, she's a lawyer too, right? She's proud of you. She's proud
Sure.
of that. And at any given moment, different identities are important to us. So the way that we might answer that question at a dinner party tonight and how I would, what I would start out with, or how are things, or what's important to you, I might start talking about my kids one day. And the next day, I might start talking about, my trip to the salon, or the next day I might start talking about a difficult meeting at work. I think at different days and different moments in time and different years in our development, we are focused on different identities. And those are the things that rise up. And, that's what's on our minds. That's what we talk about. That's what feels important right then. And I think that's natural, right? Different identities are differently important to us at different points in time.
It's natural, and there's also depth to that. And I think when we're mindful and we really dig deep and think about that, we find that we are not tied into one thing. About a year ago, a young woman called me. She very, very bright, energetic attorney. She's pregnant with her third child. And she said to me, she really is thinking of taking some time off. She had already gone part time and she's now thinking of taking time off. And she was upset. She was crying. She was confused. She didn't know what people would think of her. She didn't know how it would land. And at one point she said, my entire identity is tied up in being a lawyer. And I know how that feels only too well. And we talked through that. And I said, are you a mom? Yes. Are you a wife? Yes. Are you a sister? Yes. A daughter? What about your values? Do you believe in being kind? She went through what her values are, what's important to her. And at the end of that conversation, she said, I really never thought about it that way. So I think that what you bring up is really important, because until we're really challenged to say or explore what our identities, plural, are, we really maybe only think of it as one. Which brings me to my favorite topic, which is how all these hours that we spend doing what we're doing, even when we're already found our purpose and we are passionate about what we do, which I think is true for the two of us, but where are the boundaries? What happens? What happens when work stress spills into personal life? And maybe not even stress for sure, but the constant conversation about work. How do we set that boundary?
So I guess I'll start for myself first. I think with psychology, being in the field of psychology, there's so much crossover with life. Like if I had to pick, I mean, I'm biased, admittedly, right? And I'm sure it would be helpful if I had lawyerly skills on standby at all times as well. Psychology, though, if I had to pick, anybody who goes on to higher learning, if I had to pick one class for them to take that wasn't maybe not in their field of learning, it would be social psychology. Not even my primary field, which is clinical psychology, because it has so many impacts on understanding life and how it works, understanding people, understanding their motivations, understanding how to approach the world. And so being a psychologist, it's so focused on interpersonal dynamics and mental health and physical health and well-being, which everybody is concerned about, right? So the ways that that bleeds into my personal life, one way is that I will get people asking questions, whether it might be something like, can I get a referral? Do you know somebody who would be helpful to talk about? Do you think I should seek therapy? Starting to talk to me as if I'm their therapist, and then I have to set boundaries. Like, I'm happy to talk to you about this. It's an important topic. I can see it's impacting you. I'm happy to talk to you about it as a friend. And here are some of the boundaries around the conversation as your friend. And if you need more, I suggest you talk with a therapist, and these are the benefits to doing that versus talking with a friend, right? I find for myself, I have to turn off, and this is probably true for beyond psychology, the field of psychology, I have to turn off my work brain intentionally. Even at book club, I'm part of a book club, and that's an important part of my identity, just reading and talking about books. I love it. That was a potential career path for me. I could have, when I did, my psychology advisor was so disappointed that I wasn't getting a PhD in English or literature, and that I was choosing psychology out of my two majors, right? So that could have been a path. When I am at my book club, some of the time I'm the only psychologist in the room. I went from a book club back in Colorado with almost all psychologists. We kind of joined together from our internship group, so we were naturally in the same field. And now I'm the only one. And people will look at me sometimes and say, what do you think about this aspect of the book as a psychologist? And I kind of find myself resistant to it a little bit sometimes. And if any of those folks are out there listening to me right now, I don't mind weighing in. I'm never shy about giving my opinion. They all know that as well as you do. However, sometimes I just want to turn that part of my brain off and just think about it as a reader. Like, how do I feel about this book? Just like any of you around, sitting on the couches and the chairs in this room. So I think we have to be intentional about setting boundaries and think about how to do that. When my kids were younger, the stress, my job is intense. There are people talking about trauma. I did a lot of more direct care when my children were little. And I would come home and they would want to talk to me and connect with me. And mom, I need this, or mom, I'm excited about this. And I wanted to be there for them. However, we had a rule. And it took me a minute, even as a psychologist, to figure this out. I said, this is what we're going to do. Mom is going to go upstairs and she's going to change into her comfy clothes.
Yeah.
her comfy clothes, not her work clothes. And I'm just going to take a couple minutes to just breathe, decompress. And when I come down, I'm mom. I'm here for you 100%. So that made a huge difference. So then they knew they would just be like, "Hi, mom," and they would go back to their homework or whatever,
Didn't
and
need
they
you
would just
anymore.
right, and I would go upstairs, I'd come back, and then they knew it was mom time. So I think it's important to have rituals like that. I just mentioned that because I think sometimes that can be helpful. Some kind of transition, a very intentional transition between work and personal life. So something else I think could be useful.
I love that. So that is tip number one for everybody listening. Some sort of a ritual that separates our workday from our personal life. I think that that's very, very important. I think that social media makes it hard. I think that the constant connectivity to our phones, the dings, the notifications, the impulse control of looking at it, I think that it's mindless. And I think that what you're describing is very mindful. Coming home with intention, changing your outfit, which is almost a changing of the guard. This is who I am now, and opening up to that role. So then you're present and you're open in that relationship for what your family needs and for what you need too. I think that's really good advice.
And awareness of what you need in those transition times is really important. You
Yes.
referred to social media or maybe email notifications. So for me, it's enough to put my phone away or turn it over, and I always have it on silent. So I literally don't get notifications unless I see them.
Mhm.
For some, you might literally need to turn off your notifications every night so you don't even see emails coming in. If you can't afford to do that, depending on the type of job you have, if there's not emergencies that come through, things like that, then that's where I love that you use the word mindful. Being mindful, mindfulness is a huge part of what I try to do and be both in my work life and personal life, and I work really hard on that. We can, I'll be sure to sneak in some time to talk about meditation and ways to do that. However, just now, just talking about mindfulness, you need to be aware first. What do I need to give everything I have right now to the people in front of me right now? Maybe that's a group of work professionals at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then at 6 o'clock, it's your family or your dog or your pets or your parents or whoever it is that you're interacting with, or a friend that you met for coffee. And I think being aware of the things you need to be present and to go through those transitions is critical. And then you can be intentional. I love, and again, this isn't me, but this is knowledge from being a psychologist, combining intention and attention. Critical. You need to have an intention, and then you need to pay attention to how you're acting and behaving that's in line or out of line with that intention. So
So
the
intention
interplay.
and attention. Tip number two.
Yes.
Awareness is how it starts, and then paying attention to it acting with intention, being mindful and present, and giving others and yourself what you deserve. I think at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, that's what I'm hearing.
And it's progress, not perfection toward that, because I think people are so hard on themselves. They think I need to be mindful and present every second. That's never going to be attainable. Our minds are wired to just keep moving and thinking. And I know, it's hard to stop that. I had a meditation teacher call it, the monkey mind, right? It's
Yes,
just
I've
going
heard that.
everywhere. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's progress, not perfection. I just kind of see it as like a circle on a clock. And again, this is not my idea, but I really reinforce it with patients and also with friends that want to be more present. That you kind of think about it as a clock in your head, and you start at 12 o'clock, you're really focused, and at 3 o'clock you realize, oh, I'm not having coffee with a Reese anymore, I'm thinking about a work meeting from earlier in the day. And the goal is that distracted time that's pulling me away from the focus that I want, which is having coffee and connecting with you. We just want to get that time down. We just want to decrease it so that at least by 6 o'clock on the clock, can I pay attention to Reese, or is it 9 o'clock, or is it 12 o'clock? Or am I going around the clock a whole other time now and thinking about my meeting earlier? So that kind of goes into that whole intention, attention, progress, not perfection, but just trying to be present and focused and notice when you're not, and getting yourself back to whatever you want your focus to be.
that's a good visual too. I think keeping that in mind maybe helps draw our minds to that problem in the first place. So, people talk about burnout. There's so much burnout out there for so many different reasons. But everything you just spoke about made me realize that maybe burnout is about not setting proper boundaries.
100%. That's what I think it is. I know, again, in my profession, if you're doing direct care, you're working with difficult content, patients who are have experienced trauma, who are telling you difficult
Mm-hmm.
stories. And yet I know what the difference is between two therapists can be exposed to the same stories and yet feel very differently in their job. They could be in the same year of their job, working with the same population, and feel differently. So, why is that? I think it's because that, boundaries, not setting boundaries, or, and not just in your work and personal life, but even in that room, you know, and I mean, yes, you want to give to your patient. However, you need to be careful about how much you're giving. Are you giving so much that we're going to lose you in the profession because you're giving so much of yourself in every single moment that it's almost too much? It's emptying you out. And then on the off time, you're not doing anything to fill your tank, and I know that's not a phrase that's unique to me, but I do use it a lot with my
Sure.
patients, like just how, you've done a lot of, we use that visual too. It's very visual, right? You've done a lot of things this week that have emptied your tank. What have you done this week that has filled your tank? And I think of that almost every day. Like, I think of that actually in some ways almost every hour. I've been sitting here at a meeting, even if I just walk to my front door, open it up, breathe in the air and look at and see, oh, it's sunny today and it feels wonderful because it's Pittsburgh and we don't get
And
to
it's
see that
sunny.
that often, right? And just little things that filled up my tank just a bit. And I'm not saying every work meeting is depleting me either, because I enjoy my job. And so I don't view it that way either. And that's important to think about too. Sometimes we label things as like, this is a tank emptier or this is a tank filler. And those things may not be the same day to day, or a meeting isn't always going to be emptying my tank because I might be excited about the creative solutions we're coming up with, right? So also being careful about making assumptions about that and being creative about how to fill your tank.
So those little things count too, though, and you can do them daily or hourly. I unintentionally opened a door today to see if there was a package, and It is a beautiful day here in Pittsburgh. The sky is so blue and the sun is shining and it's cold out, but it's very fresh and there was no package. And I just lingered. It's funny that you mentioned that because I had the same experience, although mine was unintentional. And now I think that I'm going to do that with intention going forward because it really was just such a moment where I took in the quiet out there, that cold, fresh air. I think my brain recharged.
I really want anybody listening right now to think about how that impacted you, right? Had just that moment, because, and this is like a PSA from me,
Yes.
public service announcement number 5 or whatever we're on, right? Is that some people expect vacations to be sort of the cure all for their burnout. Oh, well, if I can get, I'm burning the midnight oil, working really hard. If I can just get to that vacation that I have in April, everything will be okay after those 7 days away. I cannot emphasize enough how untrue that is. I love to travel. I love vacations. I have friends who make fun of me. They say that I'm always planning a trip or on a trip or after a trip or before
Same.
a trip. Or I love to travel. I love new experiences. However, I don't expect them to be the panacea or the thing that helps me to avoid burnout, because really it's the everyday breaks and rests and things we do to fill our tank and care for ourselves that matter much, much more than 10 days away, wherever, Disney or Europe or whatever your thing
Yeah.
is. It's the everyday self-care that matters the most.
And maybe taking note because I had that unintentional tank filler today and I took note of it in the moment and I forgot about it until you mentioned it. And now it's seared onto my brain as something that I need to do during the day. So before we get into what happens if you don't do all these things, can we talk to the people who have the type of job that cannot be turned off? I can shut my computer down and be done with my appointments at 5 or at 6, and unless there's a true emergency, which is extraordinarily rare, I can be done. So where I don't disengage and mindfully engage with my life, that's on me. But what happens to the people who are doctors and get phone calls from their patients post surgery in the evening, or have jobs where there are true emergencies and it can continue? Doesn't mean that it will every single night, but it's often enough that it's part of the culture to keep checking your phone and can't really let it go until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and things happen then too. How do those people try to turn it off?
My advice for that group would be to focus on quality, rather than quantity, and also to acknowledge the reality of that with the people around you so that they don't think you're being rude or unfocused, and not necessarily apologetically, or like, with, I don't think they need to apologize for being who they are or having the kind of job they have, just giving that reason. If you see me checking my phone, I'm on call and I might need to cut this short if I'm called to do a surgery, something like that. So I think letting the people in your life know that that's part of who you are, how your job works, and focusing on the quality, and within that parameter, making sure you're using your technology so that maybe you do have your phone buzz or make a noise. Like I said, I turned mine over.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get back to that for a second. If you can't do that, if you're on call, making sure you're using that, but then try to be present with the person in a personal moment, like, anyway, right? Because it's not buzzing. And so until it buzzes, there's no action there. So you kind of have to focus both on the quality of the time and also setting the limits that you can. You don't have to keep checking if you know that it's going to make a noise, or if you have,
Yeah.
back in the day, we had the pagers and all of those things. I am not a physician. However, my role does require me to be generally available. I do sleep, right? And all of those things. However, as soon as I turn my phone on, I could have a message right away. The power is out at one of my 13 clinics. And I have to help problem solve that. Or, we're having a patient crisis and it's 8 o'clock at night. So I consider myself technically always on and available.
Mhm.
I don't turn off my teams to not be available. The only exception being if I am on a trip and I literally am away, I delegate to designees, to people that are taking care of things while I'm gone. And I disconnect from work 100%. And I make decisions about that. If it's a family trip or a holiday, I might still be available. I make it clear to my staff if I'm available, or if I'm going to Peru and I'm not going to be available for many reasons, right? I don't, I want to have some time to enjoy a new experience. I make that clear. So those are some of the suggestions I have, if that
That
if that
makes
makes
so much
sense.
sense to me, and it really resonates. The quality portion of it, it amazes me when we say these things how obvious they are, but how we can't come up with them on our own sometimes. And I speak for myself, but it brings me back to intention, attention, presence, mindfulness. We need, I think the theme is we need to decide that this is what we're going to do to keep our interactions meaningful, to keep our lives meaningful, and to live with purpose and joy. So, what happens if we don't? What happens to people who don't do these things? Whether we call it burnout due to boundaries or just burnout or misery, whatever it is, what happens?
I think you can get back to a healthy place. It just will take more time. All hope is not lost if you get to the burnout stage by any means. I I am not an expert on burnout, but I've definitely had the benefit of hearing from people who are, and that would be my top talking point. All hope is not lost if you've gotten there. You do need, though, to be intentional about how to get yourself out of that space and how to get yourself feeling healthy and connected to the world in a positive way, out of that adrenal fatigue status, all of those things. And I think prevention is great. And that's kind of where we want to start. I always preach. I wish I had I love this platform. I could do it here, but I'd love to have an even larger platform to say we should all have mental health checkups, just like we're encouraged to get an annual PCP
Yes.
checkup, right? I'm so grateful that they have screenings now for depression and anxiety. The first time someone handed me a clipboard and they gave me the depression questions and the anxiety questions, and I was like, oh, I these are familiar. I know what these are, right? I knew. And I was so grateful. I was like, oh, thank you for doing this. I'm so glad you started doing this. And wouldn't it be great if we could go to a mental health professional and have that check in? I think that would definitely help with prevention. You check in, you know what some of your risk factors are, and you start to identify them. A very common question people will ask me inside and outside of work is, how do I know if I need therapy? Right? Or when should I go for therapy? And I always say, I think most people would benefit from therapy,
Mhm.
period, with very few exceptions. And most people wait too long, especially when there are relationship issues. But just even if it's intrapersonal, just your relationship with yourself, I think that people wait too long. And that's how burnout happens, right? You just wait too long to take care of yourself. And then it just takes more time. It's just, you just got to put in the work. You need to connect with somebody who can help you. I think it will be multi layered, because if you really are experiencing burnout, you will definitely need some professional help to get yourself out of that space. And at the same time, probably working with that professional, think about how to connect with friends and family again, because a lot of times when people are burnt out, they're not doing that. They're letting everything
Yes.
outside of that workspace just drop off. They're not doing it. Sorry, I can't meet you for coffee. I have a meeting. Sorry, I can't go to this movie. Sorry, I can't go to this birthday party. and some of that can be real, if again, back to a situation like a profession where somebody's life is counting on you being in a surgery room, right? There may be some things you can't avoid. And there are many professions where you can set those limits and you just didn't. And now you just kind of have to dig yourself a little bit far, more, you're a little deeper
More
in the
out of it.
hole, and it's good. And it's going to take a little longer to get yourself out, and you will, with the right help and the right resources and the right intention to get yourself out of that space.
I also wonder if when you've gotten that far down into that space, you start wearing busy as a few things: a badge of honor, an excuse, a protection, a way to not be vulnerable or expose yourself. Maybe you're just so drained that you can't go for that cup of coffee, but instead of setting the intention, setting the time, spending time with someone you love, you're so tired and so burnt out that you don't have the bandwidth to go and be vulnerable. I find that so often when we sort of do the things that we don't want to do, but we do them with people that we love and are safe and we're going to feel good, we feel good. There hasn't been a single time when I've been so exhausted or drained or ticked off or whatever my issue was that I've gone out with someone close to me and I haven't had a great time. I've never regretted doing it. It's just hard to get there sometimes.
Right. Sometimes you have to push through that I'm too busy or I'm too tired and do it anyway. And I think, when I've been in that space, I am typically, as long as it's something I genuinely want to
Oh,
do,
sure.
I
Yeah.
push through that feeling in order to do it. And I'm always glad I did. Same as what you just said, right? Like, I'm always glad that I scheduled that time, that I protected the time, that I honored that time and did it despite, because even though you may be tired from your long day at work, that activity, that connection time is filling your tank. So once you get there and you start laughing with your friend or your
Yeah.
family, then it just starts to fill you up. And yeah, like you said, you very rarely feel like you regretted making the decision to honor that time.
And I don't want to say rarely because I think it's different for everyone, but we use that word busy to be synonymous with so many things that it isn't synonymous with. So you could say, I wish I could go, but I'm busy. I still have work today and it's Saturday. Or you could say to your friend, it's been a really, really difficult week and I want to go. I'm afraid that I might not be showing up with my best self. And if it's your real friend, they'll say, come anyway. I love you for who you are. Just come. And then you don't regret it. So busy just becomes synonymous with other stuff. And when I say wear it like a badge of honor, I don't even really mean a badge of honor. I mean a cover up. Do we use that word as a cover up for so many other things?
Right, an excuse, right?
Excuse.
Yes, I believe, for me, it's one of my values to be genuine, right? And to try to be as honest as I feel like I can
Mhm.
be, unless that honesty is going to hurt the other person more than, and that kind of thing. Otherwise, that's how I try to guide myself, right? So I have done two things. I've tried to develop friends and friendships with people who I can be honest with,
Mhm.
who I know I can be my genuine self with, right? And then also be honest and genuine with them and to nurture those relationships. And then if I find myself feeling like I can't be honest about how I feel with someone, reflecting on that. What does that mean? Is that about me? Is that about them? Is it a trust issue? Is this not a healthy relationship? Do I want to spend more time in other relationships because this isn't somebody I can be honest with? I would rather that, and if I find myself making excuses, then I want to at least reflect on that. What does that mean? Maybe this relationship for better or worse, isn't it just isn't working. It's not balanced, or I need to reflect on what that means, because I think we want to try to be honest and be able to say, I am too tired to get together tonight. And it devastates me to say that. I want to see you so much. We might need to go there. Like, we might make the decision to push past the tiredness. And maybe one night we just feel like I just can't. And, so you schedule another time.
I know that you are a huge proponent of meditation, and I want to talk to you about that. And I don't want to forget to ask you about the people who say, "Ah, meditation is not for me. I'm not going to close my eyes in a dark room. I'm not doing that." I've heard that so many times. I mean, I've heard that in response to me saying to people, "Can we just practice square breathing for a minute?"
Yeah. So actually the I'll call it an excuse because I think that's what it is.
Mhm.
The excuse I hear the most often is that I can't slow my brain down enough to meditate. Like, I'm never going to be able to quiet my brain. Why should I even try? And I sit there as
I
one of
used
the
to say
most
that, by
type.
the way.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was wrong.
What, right. I mean, as one of the most type A people I know, I'm like, and myself, right? I'm like, if I can do it and I can somehow find some pleasure, satisfaction, comfort, relaxation moments, whatever, attention and intention of meditation, then anybody can do it. And I truly mean that. I hope you don't mind if I share a couple of experiences here, because for those who
Please.
are listening that think they can't do it, I'll give you a couple very life-changing moments for me on my path around relaxation and meditation. And it's also partially what got me into being passionate about the connection between mental health and physical health. So first, I was pregnant and I was looking for a pain-free way to not pain-free, pain reliever free way to go through. And that may not be the right thing for everybody, but I discovered what was called hypnobirthing. And hypnobirthing is basically just an approach to childbirth that's deep relaxation. I'm not going to go on any tangent. Different things are right for different women. I would never tell them how to
Mhm.
go through their pregnancy or their labor or their delivery, or how they're going to nourish their child, all those things, right? I will say, though, for me, it was amazing, because what I said to the guy in the first session, it was 4 sessions learning how to do this, long sessions, like 2 hours each, I think, at least. I said, "You're not going to be able to get me to relax." Even though I had chosen to be in that room with him, I said, there is no way. This guy had a PhD in clinical psychology and hypnobirthing, and he's like, "Okay, well, let's just see." He didn't fight me on it. And he had me relaxed inside 15 minutes, like in a state of relaxation that I think I had never experienced in my entire life. And I thought, wow, if like this is possible. And then a few years ago, I wanted to get a little bit more into meditation. So I know a lot about relaxation, but I wanted to learn a little more about meditation. And I took a class through the Center for Integrative Medicine called Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction, which was developed, in a medical setting. And I won't get too much into that, but it really focused heavily on meditation. And so I started a meditation practice out of that. And it was life changing. And so I meditate no less than at least 5 days a week. Sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's 3 minutes, And for a long time, for years, I did 45 minutes a day, which to most people will sound like insanity. Like, how could you devote that time? It was amazing. The benefits to devoting that time to yourself, and the main thing you need to understand when you start a meditation practice, and there's lots of apps and different things to guide you, there's no dearth of those, is to forget about what happens during that time. Just don't, it doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
really doesn't matter. I don't care if you're breathing or not breathing, or breathing, well, you should be breathing to some extent, but not breathing in any certain way or a rhythm, or don't worry about what you're thinking about or not thinking about. Like, This is what my favorite meditation teacher that I had through this mindfulness based stress reduction said. All you're really doing is you're learning to just watch what your mind does when you give yourself some space to do that. And so it helps me. Sometimes I notice, what are the things that I'm thinking about?
Hmm.
What is important to me today? What's on my mind? What stressors are coming out? And then I might focus on my breathing for 30 seconds. And then so it's just like, what does your mind teach you when you're watching it? And that space is so valuable. And I will say, if you start that practice, you'll want to do it more. And everybody can do it. There is nobody out there, I can tell you from experience, that can't learn to relax your body or to get into a meditative space. You just need to let go of any judgment or expectations of what's going to happen during those times.
And the benefits to your brain are just scientifically proven. We know how good this is for us. And somehow people who are resistant are resistant. I wonder if there is one tip that you can give someone on how to start. What's a small way that someone can just do it?
Number one, download an app. It can be free, so you can just try it. Like, you need to start with a tool, like something, some structure. Don't try to do it just on your own. Just lay there and see what happens. Like, give yourself some structure. So, just downloading the app, sometimes that's the first step somebody will take, like a patient or a friend, and then 2 weeks later they haven't used it yet, but they have it, right?
Okay.
And then start slow, like just do a minute or two. Just start with something. The app I use, you can choose anywhere from 3 minutes to, I think, 20 minutes for this one type of meditation. So start small. Don't start with a 45-minute meditation. You'll be crawling like there's, out of your skin. Start with something small. So those are the two things. Start with some structure and start small, and just work up to something. And if it stays small, that's fine too.
I know
3 minutes a day is better than no minutes a day.
right. And I know some people do an active meditation. They do it while they're walking. They do it while they're sitting with their eyes open. You don't have to be lying in a dark room perfectly still, not thinking about your grocery list, your kids, or anything else in life.
I am so glad you mentioned that, because, right, there is not just one way to meditate. There are many types of
Hmm.
meditation. So I'll give three. One is, my favorite is just connecting with the breath. Just actually laying or sitting in a quiet space and connecting with my breath is my favorite form of meditation. However, yoga is a form of meditation. It's a form of movement meditation, body meditation. And if that's your thing, then that's what you should do. And then a third one that I really like, and there are more than these, is a visual meditation where you just look out, like you have a specific frame, like a window. Maybe it's the window out to your yard, and you just notice what you can see in that window for a certain amount of time. So, a car passing, a bird passing, leaves falling from the tree, whatever you see in that visual field is your meditation. And you mentioned walking meditation as a fourth one. So there's these different ways that you can connect with that meditative space. And there's not a one size fits all. Experiment with some different things and see what works for you.
I hope everyone at least tries it. Sitting quietly and breathing for just a couple minutes seems doable. I can't thank you enough for being here with us today and giving our listeners such amazing tips about thriving in our career, but also compartmentalizing it so that we can be thriving in all other aspects of our lives as well. Thank you. But
You're welcome.
before I let you go, I'd like to do a quick lightning round with you if you're up for it. And this is
Sure,
not
bring
like
it on.
meditation, but this is no thought needed. Ready? Number one, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I am both. It depends on the situation. So, yes. To
Yes,
both.
to
So
both.
ambivert, I think,
I'm an
is
ambivert too.
yeah.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl, 100%.
What do you do for fun?
For fun, so there are so many things I enjoy, but I would say the thing I do for fun is I love being in the city and exploring a new space. It could be an art gallery, it could be a new restaurant, something like that. Something that's like the more hole in the wall, the better. Like something that, they're not shouting to the rooftops about. I just love exploring new spaces.
I love that. What's the last show you binge watched?
Oh, uh, well, Paradise. Just the new episode, the new season just came out and we started them yesterday. So it dropped 3 episodes at once.
Oh, should that be on my
And
list?
I think so. I love
Okay.
it. Yes, I think it's so good.
Okay. What song instantly puts you in a good mood?
I love the song Blackbird, Paul McCartney, the Beatles. I love the cadence of it. I love the message, take these broken wings and learn to
It's a
fly. Yeah, and it
beautiful song.
makes me instantly, it puts a smile on my face when I hear it.
I'm smiling just listening to you. What secret power would you choose if you could?
Oh, if I could, I would love not to have motion sickness. I get motion sick just in a car and, if I'm in the passenger seat, and I would love to have the superpower of not having any motion sickness and just
Even having
not have
tried
that
all the
limit.
things?
Yes, yes. I've tried
Okay.
all the things. Yeah.
Who would play you in a movie about your life? Oh, I see it. I see it. Who would, but go ahead, you answer.
Oh no. Well, so, I mean, I hope I am, and I consider myself to be very down to earth. So it would have to be somebody who could play that. So I don't know if I could pick one, but like what I love the movie Say Anything. So Ione Skye in that movie, she just plays, such this down to earth character. Similar age group to me. Drew Barrymore too. I just have some connection with her, I think, growing up. So I don't know. As long as they could play it as just a genuine, down to earth kind of person, I'd be happy.
And I was going for Meg Ryan, but strictly on looks. No, no other reason.
Many people have said that.
Do you prefer a short text or a long conversation?
Oh, that also depends on the situation. I love connection time and I love to get deep into a conversation with folks. And I also appreciate the value of a short text. And I like when my friends know that's exactly what I want and that I can give a friend a short text and they'll not take that in any sort of way other than
Yes.
this is what she had time to type right now. So I think both, depending on the situation.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Oh, this might be a little more than a pet peeve, maybe, but I really hate it when people are unkind to anyone, really, but especially if the person is vulnerable in some way or just either whatever. I hate witnessing unkindness, just kind of for the sake of being unkind,
Yes. That's
and for
awful.
nothing else. I just always find myself very much, you know, my friends say, I want you on my team, like they know I'm going to be the one that's going to say something like, did you really just take that parking lot from that parking space from that, couple that's been circling? Like I
Yes.
am the one that's going to stand up for that. Yes, that's a huge pet peeve of mine.
Another reason we love you. And the last one, what is number one or close to number one on your bucket list right now?
Oh, well, I am planning a trip to Peru to go hiking and see Machu Picchu. I don't know that I have a real bucket list. I kind of just build it because my interest in the things I want to do change, as I experience things. So I'm not sure I have a bucket list, but that is the next big thing that I'm looking forward to doing.
And I know I can't wait to get together with you and hear all about that and see all the pictures like we always do after our trips. So thank you so, so much for being here with us, for amazing advice, wonderful energy, and your insights. Inspirational as always.
Thank you so much for having me, Aris.
And that's a wrap. If you like this episode, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and share the love. You can always reach out to me through my website, ariseclappercoachingandconsulting.com.